Now today, I want to talk about a really subtle but a foundational shift, okay? The difference between employee mode and the difference between CEO mode. Now, when in employee mode, the business is something that happens to you. You find yourself responding, you react, and you end up solving what's loudest, not necessarily what's most important. Now, and to be fair, chiropractic are trained to respond to problems, not to design environments. Simon Sinek, he talks about most companies start with what they do and how they do it. And very few of them start with why they actually do it. So Apple doesn't say we make great computers. What they say is we challenge the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. Now, as you finish this episode, I don't want you immediately trying to fix anything. I want you to just sit with one question. Am I relating to my business like an employee, or am I relating to it like a CEO? Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, folks. Welcome to another episode of the Marketing in Practice podcast, the podcast where I have the pleasure of simplifying the marketing and the mindset so you, the chiropractor, can grow your income, your impact, and your enjoyment in practice too. Now, before we get stuck into today's episode, I want to give you some context for where this podcast is heading. Over the next few months, this isn't going to be a random collection of topics. It's going to be more like a leadership curriculum, okay? It's going to be shared one conversation at a time. And each episode is going to build on the last, but not in a complicated way, but in a very deliberate way, okay? And if you've ever felt yourself working harder than ever, but enjoying practice less, this series is designed to help you change that without losing the heart of chiropractic. So as you listen, I don't want you scrambling for notes or trying to fix everything all at once. I want you to listen like a CEO. I want you to notice patterns. I want you to let ideas land. And I want you to trust that clarity is going to build over time. Now, today's conversation is where it's all going to start. Now, most chiropractors struggle or don't struggle because they're bad clinicians. In fact, one of the things that I've learned over the past 25 years is that there's very little relationship between your competency as a clinician and your practice income and enjoyment. Now, I'm not saying that you don't need to be good. I'm just saying that that's not enough. Now, chiropractors struggle because they never stop working in the practice long enough to work on it, okay? And when I talk to chiropractors who feel stuck, overwhelmed, or quietly resentful of the practice that they've built, they don't describe themselves like business owners, okay? They describe themselves like employees. There's long hours, there's constant pressure, and it seems like somebody else is always setting the agenda, okay? Does that sound familiar? The only problem is there is no actual boss, and yet the relationship feels exactly the same. Now today, I want to talk about a really subtle but a foundational shift, okay? The difference between employee mode and the difference between CEO mode. So what exactly is employee mode? When I say employee mode, I'm not saying that you're doing anything wrong, okay? This isn't criticism, but it is a pattern. Employee mode sounds something like this. Once things calm down, I'll start to think strategically, okay? Or maybe you're saying, I just need to push a little bit harder this quarter, or if I could just fix this one issue, then everything would feel better, okay? If you found yourself saying versions of that, then that's employee mode. Now, when in employee mode, the business is something that happens to you. You find yourself responding, you react, and you end up solving what's loudest, not necessarily what's most important. Now, and to be fair, chiropractic trains us for this. We're trained to respond to problems, not to design environments. Simon Sinek, he talks about most companies start with what they do and how they do it, okay? And very few of them start with why they actually do it. So Apple doesn't say we make great computers. What they say is we challenge the status quo. We believe in thinking differently, okay? The products come after the belief. Most chiropractors run their practice the opposite way. They obsess over visits, over hours, over systems and numbers, but they never clarify the relationship that they want with their business. Employee mode asks this: what do I need to do today? C mode asks this, what kind of practice am I intentionally building? So, what is the cost of employee mode? Now, the real cost of employee mode isn't just financial, okay? The real cost is emotional because you're busy, but you're not effective. You're responsible for everything, but you're in control of very little. Now, over time, sadly, this ends up leading to resentment, to burnout, or to fantasies of escape. Now, here's a line that tends to land. If you treated your marriage the same way that you treated your business, only checking it when something is wrong, most of you would end up divorced. Now, this isn't a leadership problem, gang. It's a relationship problem. Now, many of you might remember the Truman Show, okay? So in this, Truman is busy and active. He's making decisions, but the environment that he lives in is completely scripted, okay? This is employee mode, okay? It's movement without freedom. CEO mode, on the other hand, is when Truman realizes that there is a wall that exists, okay? Now, he realizes this not to burn everything down, but to finally he has the opportunity to choose differently, okay? Awareness doesn't trap us, but it's the first step towards freedom. So why is it that so many really smart chiropractors get stuck, okay? Now, we get stuck because hustle works early on. Working harder does help you grow the practice until it doesn't anymore, okay? The strategies that grew the practice from zero to busy are often the same ones that keep you stuck. Nobody teaches you the transition from clinician to CEO, and so you don't fail, but you do end up plateauing. So let me share a sporting example here, okay? Amateurs find themselves just trying harder. When professionals, what they do is they redesign the system. Elite athletes don't just train more, okay? They improve sleep, okay, recovery, coaching, and environment. An amateur asks, what else should I do? But a professional says this, what's making this harder than it needs to be? Most chiropractors are elite clinicians, but they're operating inside of amateur business systems. Okay, now I've worked with chiropractors whose practices look successful, but they cannot step away from them. They can't slow down and they have no space to think clearly. This isn't a capacity issue, okay? It's an identity issue, gang, okay? They're still operating like the best employee in the practice, not the CEO of it, okay? Now, here's the foundational shift. Employees find themselves waiting for the business to speak, whereas CEOs schedule conversations with the business, okay? CEO mode is not about doing more. It's about creating space to think, okay? So let's talk about how CEOs actually think, okay? CEOs don't think in tasks. CEOs think in leverage. An employee asks this question, what needs to be done today? But as a CEO, the CEO is going to ask this, what decision, when made once, is going to make the next 100 decisions easier? CEO mode often feels uncomfortable at first because it can sometimes feel like you're not doing as much or looks like you're doing less, while you're actually operating at a much higher altitude. Now, it's important to realize that CEOs relate to problems very differently, okay? Employees experience problems as interruptions, and CEOs experience problems as information, okay? Let me say that again. Employees experience problems as interruptions, and CEOs experience problems as information. Now, when you're in employee mode, a problem is something gone wrong. But in CEO mode, a problem means the system is teaching you, okay? Leadership isn't about fixing faster, but it's about understanding much deeper. Now, CEOs also use their time differently, and this creates leverage. Employees give time after everything else is done, whereas as a CEO, what you do is you protect thinking time before the day fills it up, okay? CEO time doesn't always look productive, okay? It might look like reflection, review, and intentionally pausing. CEOs don't find time, they decide what time is for, okay? That's another really important distinction. So I want you to take a moment to reflect with me now, okay? When a problem shows up in your practice, do you find yourself reacting immediately, or do you pause And do you ask, what is the system revealing? One of these creates exhaustion and the other leads to leverage. Now, as you finish this episode, I don't want you immediately trying to fix anything. I want you to just sit with one question. Am I relating to my business like an employee, or am I relating to it like a CEO? Okay. Awareness always comes before change. And over the next 90 days, we're going to explore things like identity, your relationship to time, the structure of your business in terms of systems, and leadership. Okay. Now, this isn't about becoming cold and corporate, but it is about becoming intentional. And in the next episode, we're going to talk about the habit that separates chiropractors who feel constantly under pressure from those who lead a calm, sustainable practice. All right, folks, thanks for all that you do. Keep saving lives, and I look forward to seeing you back here next week. See you soon. Bye. If you've enjoyed listening to this podcast, you have to come and check out my Community Influencer Program. It's my monthly coaching program where we take all this material and I'll work with you to help you apply it, implement it, and systemize it. The Community Influencer Group Coaching Program is designed to help you increase your practice income, impact, and enjoyment. Join me over at anguspyke.com/join. That's anguspyke.com/join. I'd love to see you there.